Now, I've got two different types of lenses here with me that are suitable for the Sony E-mount. So as you may know, Sony has brought out the 200-600mm lens, which is this one here. I've got it sitting on the A9 body at the moment, and I've obviously added some camouflage onto it and swapped out the actual foot for a Arca Swiss suitable foot. And I'm just listening around, and there are some wrens around, some birds here, so just keeping an eye on them. And if I do see something, I'll just start shooting. I like shooting with the battery grip, and some people may not like it. It just gives me a bit more stability and a bit more weight in the back of the actual camera when you actually got telephoto lenses on. Also, I mean, I'm a portrait photographer by trade, and for me, shooting in portrait mode, that's why I've got battery grips basically. But nevertheless, when we actually go back to this lens came out, I believe, about 2 years ago or more. And since then actually started creating a bit of a following, and a lot of people were having some problems here and there with some copies of these lenses. But overall, if you actually have got a good copy, then this is amazing, this camera, for its price. This lens here is non-tromboning, and you've got a very short throw for the actual zoom. So it's a quarter turn on the ring, which is very, very comfortable and a beautiful. It doesn't take much to drive it, but it's also not too loose to actually worry about that. Some people are saying that this lens has got some creep, but I don't actually have any problems with lens creep, and your copy should also not have any problems with that. If you do have problems with it, then you should actually just return it or bring it back to the service center. Get in contact with Sony about this, and they'll look after you for sure. There's an adjustment that they can do in service. Now, as to switches, etc., you can actually just do a little close up in a minute, and here you can actually see this, that this first switch is the AF to MF, manual to auto focusing, and you actually got a limit switch here of focus distance. Now that limit switch is very important on this lens, and a lot of people have really failed on understanding what you actually should do with this. With this, you will actually stop having focus problems. A lot of people are shooting basically from birds around 10 meters distance. If you're doing that, then you should basically switch this switch into the center, which is 2.4 meters to 10 meters. 2.4 meters for this lens is the minimum focal distance, so don't be discouraged by actually understanding this lens properly. Also, there is a optical steady shot on or off. Obviously, that's the actual anti-vibration or anti-stabilization on and off. So usually we leave it on. Even I tend to even leave it on, or actually forgetting to switch it off when I've actually got it on tripod. And I haven't really seen too much of a difference. A lot of people are turning around saying if you are in a high shutter mode, then you should maybe turn off stabilization. They are not seeing what I'm seeing in a lens. When you actually are focusing on something, on a bird for instance, it actually just it locks, the stabilization locks on, and it basically just gives you the super stabilized view. Now with that also comes the caveat that you are actually using more battery power on this, but it really doesn't really matter too much on the A9. There is also stabilization mode 1, 2 and 3 will give you more and more, basically just give you more and more stabilization in different vibrate and movements. So apart from all that, you've actually got the actual tightening knob for the foot ring, which is basically just, it's not detenting or anything like that. So it actually, you undo it and then you turn it, and it just, you have to go by the actual dots on the actual lens to go by, so there's no positive lock-in that you would actually find in it. Now the other thing is also there's been a few reports now I've heard of where people are losing their lens hood. This is basically just a screw on. It doesn't have a positive lock on. It will click on, but it's not actually hasn't got a switch or a button to actually unlock it again. It just comes off via pressure. So if you bump that hard up against something, then it can happen that this will actually come off and you'll lose it. So just be very careful with that and keep an eye on it. What I've done is actually I've used part of the camo. As you can see, the zoom ring here, it hasn't got a camo on it. So what I've done is I've slipped it over the other camo, and I've slipped it so that handles onto the lens hood and gives me a bit more sort of like it covers up the lens hood, and it goes down to the other part of the camo, and it basically just works really well, holding everything in place. And it's another insurance if that hood does come or does turn itself off, like it comes off, then there is that bit of security behind it where the actual camo will actually hold it on. Then also included with the lens is obviously some eyelets here that are molded into the actual lens, and you can actually put your peak design lock on tabs there, so you can actually put a strap on it. So that's about it. Now the other part is that you can actually fit on a teleconverter onto this. Is a Sony 1.4 teleconverter, and it will fit this. Currently there are 6 lenses in the Sony lineup where this teleconverter will fit on, which is the 70-200 first GM first version, and then the 70-200 GM second version, and then there is the 100-400 GM from Sony, and then there's 200-600, and then there's a 400 GM and the 600 GM. So these will fit. There's also a 2x teleconverter available, but so far I've had fairly good quality images coming out of this. Not to forget that you will go from the current aperture of 6.3 at 600mm to f9, so you will be at f9 at the widest, so you need a really sunny day. So this is the reason why I don't have it on at the moment. As you can see behind me, it's a very grey sky. Who would I recommend this lens to? Well, I would turn around and say this lens is good for anyone that's actually shooting wildlife, sports, race cars, you name it. This is very, very nice. You cannot forget that your range will be limited to a minimum distance of 2.4 meters, which I got caught out a few times, but it's once you actually know your limitations on lenses, it's okay. Now on the A9, the Sony A9, which has been discontinued, unfortunately, it drives really well. I've had this on several cameras, on an A1 and A7 IV, A7R3 and A7R4, so there's no problems with that. I've heard a lot of good results also on APS-C cameras like a 6500, an A6500 or an A6600 or so, and you will obviously get your crop ability with this lens. So you will go from a 600mm to it'll be at a 900mm, and obviously you can also do that with super APS-C or super crop that you can get on the Sony full frame lenses. So however, you will actually be limited down to for instance on this A9, you'll be limited down to about 11 megapixels or 12 megapixels, somewhere around there. But apart from that, it's just a joy to use, and it's a great lens. A lot of people may not know the competition out there, and obviously between this 200-600 and other lenses, what else is out there what you could actually have on your camera? Now obviously if you want to be anywhere near 600mm range, you can maybe go for the 100-400 GM from Sony, and then put a teleconverter on it, and then you may think that's all good, but I've got caveats about that because of the actual cost. Now the cost, when it comes down to the cost, you're actually looking at you know, like probably a fair bit extra on top of this lens to actually gain that 100-400 GM. It is closer focusing, so the minimum focus distance for the 100-400 GM is around 800mm, and so that makes it a bit more of an interesting travel lens, and it obviously is tromboning, so it means it's actually a shorter lens to pack away in your bag. So we can talk about Tamron, which has the 100 to 500mm, and I unfortunately have not had the pleasure yet to actually use that lens, and from what I'm hearing it's quite capable, but it's also fairly on about the same heaviness as the 200-600 and almost the same price from what I'm hearing. So it's an interesting thing to look at if people want to go down that Tamron path. Now what I've turned around and done is I have got myself a Sigma lens, which is the Sigma Sony E-mount version of the Sigma Sports. Now the first thing that you realize with this lens is the actual craftsmanship and how it was actually built. First up, I can actually tell you straight away that this lens does have an Arca Swiss mount inbuilt in the foot. So straight out of the box, that's what you don't have to worry about anymore. That is already included. The other thing is also the lens hood, in comparison to the 200-600 from Sony, has got the screw knob type fit, which is basically the same as what Sony has with the 400 and 600 GM lenses. A very good idea. Also, when you actually look at the foot ring, it actually is detenting, so it actually, I don't know if you can hear that, but it actually detents every quarter turn, so you are basically assured that this lens, you will know exactly, even when you are shooting in the dark, you will know where the quarter turn is on this lens. Also, the other point to point out is also that this is a tromboning lens, obviously, and it has got a lock switch, so when you're locking, this will not trombone out. And then when you put it on S, which is on the opposite side of the switch, it will actually trombone out very easily, and it will actually just sort of like creep out like you wouldn't believe, but that is how it's meant to be. There is also a center switch where you can actually go into the center, and that makes tromboning a lot harder, and it also will not really, it creeps out with it will creep out of very slow, in a slow manner. So those are the 2 steps or 3 steps that you can actually choose from. Now when you look at this, has also got the actual the custom switches here that same as what Sony has, so they've actually adopted that, so you got 3 buttons on the lens to actually switch that over. Now again, with this lens, you've also got the hooks so you can actually put a lens strap on. Your Peak Design clips can go on there. The actual foot can actually be removed if you really want to, and there are 4 screws underneath, and I just don't know why you would want to remove this foot, because it's got everything that you want, but however, you know, they made it available so you can actually just take the actual foot off. You cannot remove the ring and the actual switch set. Now the switch set is very much the same as what Sony has got. You have got the focus manual AF switch, so you got the switch here, which is the focus limit switch, and it will go, so you got 3 settings there, so you can actually go from full all the way from to 10 meters and infinity, etc. There is also the optical stabilization. You can have that on or off, and then just it's got a 1 and 2 step. The first step is actually OS, it says, and the second step says 2, so it basically just means that it's it just means a 1 or a 2 step. Now there is also a custom switch, but that is that can only be accessed from what I understand via the base unit from Sigma that you can actually clip onto here, and then you can access the software in your computer to actually make adjustments. I don't have it, and I probably wouldn't ever really bother buying it. So this lens is currently sitting on the A7 IV, which is very nice, and it's a beautiful birding camera as well. However, I do run this in silent mode and electric mode, but I'll be talking more about this in another video and give you some more details about it, because I haven't finished testing this fully. and there are a few questions that I've still got, and I still want them answered before I actually do a video. There is a lot of YouTubers out there that have actually just they basically just get the camera for one day or something like that, and they basically already have an opinion about this camera, which is sometimes not a very good idea to actually blurt that out and actually tell people what they think about it after 2 days or something. So I reserve still my opinion about this camera, but it is a good camera. Don't get me wrong. I will tell you straight off the gap that's a good that it's a good camera. But I still want to really test it for its ability a lot more than what I have been so far. So who would want to buy this Sigma lens, the DG-DN lens? Now, I mentioned to you about the 100 to 400 GM that it can actually focus at a minimum distance of 800, around 800 mil. Now this one can actually focus at a distance of 580 mil, so it's even closer than what the Sony 100 to 400 can do, which is amazing. Now it is very fast focusing. However, the actual down points on this lens straight away, and this is a limitation that has been set by someone who knows who, and it's the 15 frames a second limitation. So you basically, if you want to shoot faster than 15 frames a second, well, you're just out of luck with this lens. Also, if you want to fit a teleconverter on this, you cannot fit a teleconverter on this. From what I understand, this lens also comes as an L mount, and apparently there is a teleconverter available for that one from Sigma. However, the Sony teleconverter will not fit, unfortunately. So it will fit. You can actually physically fit it. However, it will not actually work, so the points are not working, and it doesn't make sense. But the opening of this lens is actually really designed to actually take that teleconverter for some reason. Now, again, you know, like, I mean, when it comes down to weight, this lens is the same. It's only up by a few grams between the 200 and 600 and this lens, so there is no weight difference as far as I'm concerned. The only other thing with it is if you pack this away and you actually want to have peace of mind that it's actually going to fit into a bag. I mean, this form factor is a lot smaller than what you see with the 200 to 600. Also, the lens comes in the box with a proper soft hood for packing away. So for when you put it in your bag again, you don't want to put a lens cap on. It does actually come with a lens cap. However, I prefer using the soft. When you got this ready to be put away, you just basically just get the hood, put it over, and this works very much the same as what the 400 and 600 GM lens, the prime lenses, do. And there are several other lenses that can actually do this. So you basically just got this all packed away. It's got a sort of like a hard base, so the actual lens is protected, and this is just a really good design, and loving what Sigma has actually done here. This lens is actually made in Japan. I don't know if that's for every lens that you go out there and purchase, but my copy is from Japan, which is interesting. Now, looking at this, at the 200 to 600 from Sony, it's made in China, and I'm not having a go at where lenses are manufactured or anything like that. But from what I've been hearing, the tolerances are a little bit less, in very less tight, should I say? Now, I know this because my lens ring on the 200 to 600 is actually loose. And I probably will bring that back to the service to actually get that sorted out. And this will be the second trip of this lens going back to Sony service. The first trip was right at the beginning because it had focusing problems and some parts were replaced on it. However, I don't take that against Sony. If there's any problems or anything like that, they'll just honor the warranty and they'll actually fix whatever needs to be fixed, and that's a really good idea. Now, if you're thinking about putting any kind of extra glass on here, like a polarizer or ND filter or anything like that, I would recommend that you don't. But the diameter is just here. I'll display it up on the screen. It will be very expensive for you to actually go out there and buy this size glass, and it goes the same with the Sigma glass. You will have the same problem with that as well. And the size, again, I'll display that. And it's a lot of glass to actually put on. When it comes down to putting extra glass on these lenses, I mean, if you're wanting to protect this glass, I probably wouldn't even bother, because you will always have the lens hood on the right way when you use it. And I would highly recommend that you do that. If you ever are looking for a lens, I mean, I can highly recommend either one, the Sigma 150-600G DG DN lens, or the 200-600G lens from Sony. I will show you a picture with the camouflage off, so you can get an idea. So this is a white lens. The Sigma is a black lens, and but there shouldn't be any problem. Sigma says that because they actually are using a magnesium alloy body now, they've really made sure that the heat expansion, etc., is not a big problem or anything like that. So we'll actually keep its tolerances, and it doesn't matter what weather you actually work in, to its tolerance specifications. So my conclusion is basically inconclusive. Obviously, there are certain things that you will like about this lens, and there'll be certain things that you'll like about the Sigma lens. I would highly recommend either one of them. Now, if you are in the shooting with an A1 or an A9 II, something that actually where you want to get the high shutter speed, then the only lens that you would be looking at would be the 200-600 from Sony, because the Sigma will just only do 15 frames a second. That's the only biggest problem with it. So in conclusion, there's one more thing I should mention. The Sigma has 11 blades on its aperture, whereby the Sony only has 8 blades, and that will actually probably give you a little bit of a different bokeh, and also will give you a little bit, a few more star points on lights, lanterns, etc., if you're doing that sort of photography with these lenses. Apart from that, I mean, there's no huge difference. It's more about compactness of a Sigma, yes, and the non-tromboning lens, which is nice and balancing when you actually are using this with a gimbal or something like that. I mean, it will just keep on balancing at one point, and it's not a problem when you zoom in and out. So, in retrospect, I would probably go for the 200-600, but also I'm very much in love with the 150-600 from Sigma. Now I'm going to keep both lenses. One of those lenses will be ready for the person that actually books in a workshop with me, a one-on-one workshop, or actually having to go through the initial expense, so they can maybe just try out and just see if birding is for them. Okay, until then, and I'll see you all later, guys.